Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us once again. Whether you've been here once or twice today, we are so happy to have you. I'm one of your two hosts, Nor Kyle.
And I am one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali. But
Yes.
now you have to figure out which one.
So we've already done a talk today. We might be a little loopy. We had our once monthly other talk this morning at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. We do that every third Sunday of each month, God willing, as long as we don't screw it up. And that is to accommodate the people who cannot be here at our usual time, which is 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. And again, we do that every week. So join us for any and all of those. So, quick spiel, of course. Oh yeah, we do have a little bit of a thing we want to share about how much YouTube is a pain in our asses, which is something we've been struggling with for some time. We managed to get some control over the ads that were being posted on our content via growing our subscriptions to a certain number, which was awesome. But suddenly they've decided that they want to put ads on the beginning of our videos again, and we
Yeah,
do not at this point have power over that. So we apologize.
yeah, they changed it all around. They said, now you can you're going to have ads in the beginning and the end of the video because we want you to make more money. But you can decide whether or not you have an ad interrupt in the middle of your video. So that's unfortunately the only control that we have, and we can blackball some advertisers, which we have done to at least 50% of the advertisers on YouTube. But if you start one of our videos and you get an ad beforehand, we apologize for this. We do not want you to see ads. So
Yep, but that's the price we pay, all of us collectively, for using a platform that is
only about money.
free. I mean, quote unquote free, right? Comes with ads to, you know, support their bottom line, even if it doesn't help us out. So, mm, 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 mm. Ian's going to help us out in figuring out a way around that possibly. So, thank you, Ian. So, anyway,
Right.
YouTube spiel. Nonetheless, despite that, you can continue to support us by doing that whole thing where you like, you comment, you subscribe, you share our content with your friends and your enemies, all of which we're totally okay with and encourage. So I think we can keep it at that for now. All right.
And we would particularly appreciate it if you took a moment to hit the like button because um, our haters, while they took a vacation or something, are back. And so they try and ding every video. It's this one guy sitting in his mother's basement, and he just, every time we put out a video, it's like, click, hate it.
Yep, we've got one or two of those.
Yeah.
Check in every week.
Yeah. So help us balance that out.
Yep. And as I mentioned this morning, we're going to be doing our fund drive to support the nine-sided circle. As a collective, we need to be able to maintain this space, and part of doing that means making sure that our Zoom subscriptions and all of those things are covered so that we can continue to do this
Yeah.
as an offering.
Yeah. We're looking at equipment upgrades in the next month or so, probably in the next couple of days because it's Black Friday and we can
Hmm.
get a discount on them. So that's always good.
So more forthcoming about that soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so this morning we had an interesting topic. We talked about certainty. So hopefully you'll take some time to check that out. And this evening we're going to be talking about something that kind of came up out of the blue this week after we saw a quote from a book recounting something interesting about the nature of shock points.
Yeah. And I will read the quote. It's
Okay, I think that
from
would be
a
helpful.
book called A Questing Life by Charles Campbell, who was a second generation Gurdjieff student. And shall I read the quote?
Sure, I don't have it in front of me, so
I do.
that's all you.
I begin to wonder about the use of the word shock that featured strongly in Ouspensky's description of Gurdjieff's cosmo-psychology, and was curious to know what Gurdjieff's Russian word translated as shock was, udar or tolchok. Madame de Hartmann replied at once, tolchok. Udar is when you hit someone on the top of the head and he falls down and he can't get up. This confirmed my surmise that the word had been translated incorrectly. I had checked with Dr. Ted Shedlovsky, a Russian physical chemist in Rockefeller Institute, who said, Tolchok is used in physics for impulse, while udar is used for blow or shock. And this, when we ran across it, I mean, this is an important thing.
That's the end of the quote, by the way.
Yeah, that's the end of the quote. The book goes on, but the quote stops there. So why is this important, Nor?
Well, first of all, it's important to us because we are always going on about the Enneagram and about
The
shock
octave.
points, all of that stuff. So this is integral to our work, and that means it's important for us to make sure that we're always developing or, fostering right understanding of the terminology that we're using. Sorry, someone has arrived.
Yeah, I felt
And
better.
Ian, do you have a thought that you'd like to share, or I can read your thing in the chat because it's part of the intro, I would say. Ian says, a very timely topic for me. I had been thinking that shock frequently is not a good name. In the kitchen example, I'm guessing that this is the Enneagram of the kitchen that he's referring to, which we've covered multiple times and have done videos specifically on, which you can check out. In the kitchen example, it should not even be a quote mild surprise, let alone an actual shock to specify the food in the community. Okay.
Yeah. Now that's interesting and it's accurate. And when Gurdjieff describes this in terms of the octave, he doesn't talk about shocks. He notices that the octave, and by octave he means the basic major scale octave, consists of a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, a half step, a whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Do, re, mi is the fundamental in two whole steps. Mi, fa is a half step. If you look at a piano, those are the two white keys without a black key between them. Then sol, la, si are all whole steps. And then from C to do, it's a half step. It's the other place where there's no black key between the white keys. Now, Gurdjieff says that at the point of the half steps, the energy going up the octave is retarded, meaning set back. He never said anything about a shock. And he says something has to enter to help the energy move across that bridge, to pick it back up again. And so his use of the Russian word, which can be translated as an impulse or a push and a few other things. I'll throw up the dictionary definition of the word on the forum after the talk. Carries the idea of adding something to it to help it get going. It's like, how to describe it? Not quite that. It's the idea of that little, it's like, think about when you are going up a hill on a bicycle and it starts getting really hard. If you have a friend that can come in behind you and give you a push, or you can downshift your gears. to make it up the hill. And both of those are something that gives you an impulse to continue. Impulse, not in the sense of being impulsive, but in the sense of a pulse of energy.
Yeah, or impel, which
Yes.
means drive. It's a verb. Vibe. My bad. Words. It's a verb that can mean drive, force, or urge someone to do something. So it is like a push, but not in the sense of like a,
Yeah.
jostling, jarring thing necessarily.
Yeah. And the idea behind this is that human endeavors are not done. It's Chris.
It is Chris. Yeah, I admitted him.
Yeah. Human endeavors are not done within a closed system.
Vian says, like maybe like a catalyst.
Not quite like a catalyst. A catalyst is not affected by the change that it creates. So if you have an atmosphere rich in hydrogen and oxygen, and you drop platinum dust into it, it will form water on the platinum. And that's a catalytic effect because the platinum does not change. But it
Okay.
creates a change in
sorry.
something else. So
No,
people,
don't be sorry. Yeah,
yeah,
these
don't
are
be
the
sorry.
questions that are good
I'm
to
a woman. No, I'm kidding.
You've got to watch that here because Noor will not put up with that shit.
It's so in this situation, the push is also being affected.
Yeah, the push will be affected because it interacts with whatever the process is. So using the Enneagram of the food comes in at the me-fa shock, and it is then affected by the process. The food is changed.
I imagine there being, Enneagrams touch Enneagrams
Yeah.
at these points of impulse, let's say. So we need to remember that they're part of their own cycles, in that, that energy is kind of interjected into adjacent Enneagram cycles. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it did. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry that I interrupted you, Mushtaq, but I felt like that was an important question.
That's an important question. So interrupt me all you want. That way I can sleep more.
Anytime he can get me to do more talking, he gets to take a nap. So, I apologize. Where were we?
We were at the idea that human processes are not closed systems.
Yes.
The problem with the closed system is that it will always move towards entropy. It'll move towards a steady state, lowest common denominator, heat death of the universe, whatever. So if the human body were a closed system, once we used up all of the energy that we have in our body, we would die because no more could come in. Human body is an open system because it is designed to take in energy making substances from the outside and incorporate it into the system. I got to be careful because they might decide I'm talking something medical here. I'm not saying anything medical. No, not talking about even dieting. Just food goes in, gives you energy. So both shock points are places where energy is added to the system, where the energy that is added gives an impulse or an impetus. I like that word too, an impetus related to the word impulse, to continue. If it doesn't come in, the system stalls. Does that make sense? Do you understand why the system would stall? James,
Is
yes.
that by virtue of it being without that, it reduces to a closed system? Is that
Yes.
thus winding down to homeostasis?
Yep.
Right.
That's another good word, homeostasis. Again, we have to be careful because YouTube might think we're talking about gay people. Your mic is off, Noor.
We had a video taken down today for reasons, so we're a little frustrated by that right now. Anyway, I just wanted to add that the word I was looking for was inject, not interject. I don't know why I said that, but anyway.
It's all good.
It's all good.
So, the quality of each shock is different. And we've talked about that at length too, but I'm going to remind everybody that the quality of the first, and they call this the first and the second conscious shocks, or conscious impulse. I like that so much better. Because when you say shock, it's like you think of the Zen guys, right? The Zen guys like to hit you with a stick. You know that, right? You're meditating, you're minding your own business, you're sitting there, and all of a sudden they'll come up behind you and go whack on the shoulder with this big old stick. That's a shock. That is not an impulse. That doesn't necessarily add energy to the system. It could if it was exactly right time and everything, but who knows?
Yeah, sometimes it might be like that, but standard, probably is going to be more of this not quite intentional, but like a just kind of this supportive force.
Yeah. So the first shock, the first conscious shock, or the first impulse is something that you have to will. So when we talk about the kitchen, this is the point where food enters. And in order for food to enter, you have to will it to enter. Meaning you have to call up the grocery store and say, I need 4 heads of cabbage, I need 15 pounds of steak, I need 22 eggs, whatever. And then they deliver it. But it is your will that brings the food in. At the second conscious shock, it's not your will that gets you past the shock or initiates the impulse. It is grace. So at the second conscious shock of the kitchen, you say, oh, community, I have food and I would love to feed you. And then you wait until the community goes, yeah, we could be fed, and they come. You can't force them to come. You can't order them to come. You can only invite. So I want you to think about these two qualities of impulse that you can have. The impulse of willing something to happen and the impulse of inviting something to happen. Active and receptive. Does that make any kind of sense at all?
We got a thumbs up from Halil. Any questions so far? Okay, I think we're good.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you know when you get to the interval point? This is important.
I don't think you can know unless you are paying attention. I think at that interval point, you fall asleep to what's happening.
That's a possibility, but you can know. And it's important that you know that you can know. And it's two different kinds of knowing. So yes, and you get stuck. That's one way you know. So if Noor were to sing the first four notes of a major scale,
Is that my cue?
that's your cue.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol. Is it coming through it all?
Do you hear? Yeah, I heard it all. Do you hear between the mi and the fa how it sounds different than between the fa and the sol? One more time for us, please. Yeah, so do you hear that half step in there? You have to train yourself to hear it a little bit.
That's the half step, right?
Yeah. So the first conscious shock is subtle. On the other hand, would you go through the first seven notes of the octave,
Okay.
but without the eighth?
Yes.
Notice how that makes you feel. One more time.
There's something left undone.
There is something left undone. There is something left unresolved, and you feel it in your body. Okay, hit the last note. And yeah, we both have a pretty strong background in music, which has served me well in understanding what the hell Gurdjieff was talking about. He used, yeah, it doesn't happen with mi fa. And that's because mi fa is something that you take action with. This is my theory anyway. The impulse is different. The quality is different. And that's why it's not, oh, it's the first and the other first conscious shock or conscious impulse. It's the first conscious and the second conscious, and they are different in quality. The first interval can be dealt with by you. The second interval can't. And that feeling of incompleteness at the end of the octave is something that needs to reverberate through your bones so that you know that you have to step into a place of grace. Am I making sense to you guys? I know it sounds a little esoteric.
Khalil says yes. I want to hear from other folks too.
Yeah, I'm expecting that Khalil is going to have enough of a background to follow along without any trouble. So,
James, how about you? How is this landing for you?
Um, that you have to be aware at certain points uh, makes perfect sense. How's it landing? I'm taking it in, keeping up, digesting. It actually seems pretty sensible so far. I don't find it particularly like outlandish
Yeah.
or weird or even particularly esoteric for that matter. Um, I don't have a lot to contribute at this point, but I certainly have gone through points in my life where I feel I've gone into a an inert, reg almost a physical feeling of inertia of not being awake at some crucial point. It's really hard to put my finger on. So I think I know the negative, as it were. And recently, with the work I've been trying to do here, I sort of feel what's like very much. I still think it's a sort of a 0.5 kind of thing, you know, trying, failing, but grinding away, and things starting to very slowly shift at some kind of glacial pace. But
The slog point.
Yeah.
yeah,
Part that seems like it never ends. Yeah.
yes,
But your reflections have allowed me to find, I think, a way to explain this a bit better.
okay.
Yeah.
Noor, if you would give me do re mi, just there.
Mm-hmm.
Now listen to that one more time.
Mm-hmm.
Now give me the fa.
Mm-hmm.
Do you notice that that interval helps the scale feel more complete?
I feel that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the difference between the first and the second impulse. In the first impulse, the interval makes a completion. In the second, the interval, the half step, demands energy to be complete. This is on a feeling level. That it's not that, I mean, the scale is just the scale, right? It's just the natural harmonics of a fundamental note. But what it does to us inside, and it seems pretty universal, is it makes us feel differently about the first half interval and the second half interval. So if we hit do re mi and we don't get that fa, it feels like unfinished. And it is unfinished because if you don't get the fa, you cycle back to the beginning. Process breaks down at that point if you don't get the fa. And at the second interval, if you don't get the do, the process breaks down.
That final
Yeah,
do.
that final
Yeah.
note. Yes.
The thing that brings it full circle.
Yeah. And for me, this is not even something that I logic out. This is a feeling in my body. When I listen to the notes, when I listen to the harmonics of the fundamental, they make me feel this way, for whatever that's worth.
Sometimes that's how the way to communicate about these things shows up. Just by sensing into it. Yeah. So I just want to, as we sit with that for a moment, I want to touch in on what people have been saying in the chat.
Yeah.
Ian says, I'm kind of stuck in that place these days. I'm in that kind of place these days, sort of stuck, thinking that's around, this 0.5, this sometimes called the dark night of the soul point. And he says, this is why finding you guys has proved to be so interesting. Thank you, Ian.
Interesting is such a kind way to put it.
Yes. James, sure.
One of the limitations I found when hanging with the non-duality bros was it's almost like their answer to everything was just sort of passive witnessing. And when I get to these stuck points, that's where the instinct says there has to be something more active or more, in some sense, more effortful happening. And a lot of the non-duality guys seemed their witness only would have actually seemed to be some kind of depression they were falling into, not any kind of real expansion or stabilization of awareness.
Yeah.
So that's
I
where
can
this
see that.
Enneagram teaching is far more useful and practical, I think, at least in that respect.
Yeah. And if you were to hang out with an actual Taoist teacher or an actual Advaitist, old style Advaitist teacher, or an old style Abhasya Treka teacher in Kashmir, they wouldn't be doing that. I know this for a fact because that's one of the places where I studied was Abhasya, was the Trika system of Kashmiri Shivaism, which is considered non-dual, but it ain't non-dual like the modern Western non-dual bros. Though they do
quick
ganja.
question as an aside. That popular book, The Triadic Heart of Shiva, is it worth a look?
Never read it.
Never read it. No.
Never read it, yeah.
Topic for another time.
Sorry, what was it, James? I didn't hear.
Triadic Heart of Shiva, I think it's by someone called Ortega, and it keeps cropping up as some kind of classic in the field, apparently. And I just saw it recently in a secondhand bookshop, place I must not go, but anyhow. And
It's always nice to
I
know
will
what's
look
out
into
there.
it and see what I think. And if I develop an opinion, I'll let you know. I stayed with the classics. You know, for me, my teacher had me study the Shiva Sutras and the Vijnana Bhairava and the Spandakarika and a few documents like that. He wasn't interested in modern commentaries. He was like, here, Shiva told you the truth right here. Shut up, listen to this, stop thinking about this other stuff.
Okay.
Thanks, James. Yeah, we'll check it out. Ah. Hey, Chris, what's up? Are you able to chat for a moment?
Yeah, it's Francisco's bedtime here, so I just can't talk too loud. But
How's Francisco doing?
he's a champ. Yeah, he's I think he's going to be bear crawling. Well, he kind of is bear crawling before he's like crawling. It's really funny.
Cute.
He's so
You
cute.
must put up more pictures of him.
Yeah, I'll send you some.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll start. You don't want to open the floodgates, so Mushtaq, because I'm a proud papa.
I am totally down with the floodgates, man. I take great joy in my friends' children.
Well, he'll be in a better position when his papa sells this house that he's renovating, which is the example that I was working in this talk, and the passive shock at 0.6. I'm thinking about like that being something around the phase of like the buyer accepting the offer, and it like requires that other party, right, in order for like, and what I've seen is just that I've been learning a lot through the frustrations and the slog of selling this house, and it occurs to me that in this, like, I was getting stuck at the 0.6 where we've had like multiple people say yes for a contract, and then it just like, it all kind of falls apart to actually become a closed transaction in that point of like the 0.6 had not really been resolved. And I look back and I think, oh, I can see how at 0.3 there was I'd been going into it like not wanting, I wanted to sell it as is, and I didn't want to like do all the renovation work to actually get it there. So I was trying to sell it without like, so my impulse, or at 3, was like, I just want to get it done. And what just kept bumping into that. And I had to realize, like, I have to change that impulse to, I'm going to get it done all the way. And now I'm like coming back into this 0.6 again. And so the saga continues, but this was a good teaching for me to apply to this situation I'm dealing with like right now.
That is
Excellent.
so interesting. I'm enjoying this.
And
Thank you, Chris.
you will sell the place, because who wouldn't want to live in Superior, man?
I'm telling you,
It's been spruced up so nicely.
financing it,
Yeah.
it needs to be financeable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suspect that prices there are a little bit lower than, say, prices here.
Yeah, that's true. And the gentrification train's probably coming, so we're trying to get ahead of it as the best we can.
Smart. Yeah.
It's scary.
Rock on, man. You're
Yeah,
doing
get a
good.
nice, good, solid community and let them gentrify around you. And yeah.
Right.
And Chris is I think I saw that.
Yeah, I'm repping the tea today.
Yeah. Yep, the nine-sided circle tee. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Chris. So, Mushtaq, what do we have to say then about the entering point?
The entering point, which is another shock, interestingly enough.
I mean, this may be the most shock-like,
Yeah.
quote unquote, shock point, I would imagine.
So the entering point is the fundamental note. It's even beyond being the fundamental note, because the way we usually lay out the Enneagram, the fundamental is at 1, but the intention for the fundamental is at 0/9. The point that says, I'm going to pluck the string now. Boing. That is the initial shock, the entering shock, or entering impulse. So, what would that feel like?
Like a stirring, right?
Yeah. See if I can do this while I'm sitting. So, I'm sitting here. And I go, so while the note, I hope you all heard the note and it didn't cut out.
Soft, but it was there, yeah.
Okay, good. The point just before I hit the note and I look and find the note, Ian couldn't hear it. That's okay. It wasn't that great of a note.
Maybe I only heard it because you're in the next room.
That could be.
Now that I realize this. Yeah. Anyway, yes. So he was sounding a tone. There was a silence and then there was a tone.
Yeah. And the place between the silence and the tone is the initiating impulse. The impulse to make that tone has to happen an instant before the tone. It is the will to make a note. Does that make sense?
I'm seeing some heads nod. Yes.
Yeah.
Shuri feels she gets it.
Yeah.
And Ian says yes. Ian says thumbs up.
Yeah. This is something that goes all the way back to Pythagoras, at least, probably further back than that, but he was the guy who seems to have written a bunch of this stuff down. But the intention comes before the action. If there's no intention, there's no real action. There's just flopping about. Yes, Chris is in fact a Pythagorean fanboy. It's one of the things I like about him. So how are we doing this? Are you getting the sense of the difference between a shock, which is slap upside the head, and an impulse, which is gently adding a push to your movement so you can go forward more easily?
Yeah, I think that is understood. Cherie, did you want to chime in?
Of course you do.
I was thinking about it. There's that impulse there, right there. Should I, shouldn't I? And with the impulse, I was thinking of anticipation. So once you've got that impulse, you've got that anticipation before you actually take that intention. And then just watching someone who gets really excited right at the beginning, they're always really excited about whatever it is that is coming in, whether it's cooking or whatever. And then having that grace is really a wonderful way of completing everything. And you can hear it, and you can feel it, and you can taste it.
Yeah. And I have an example for that. Get my nay again. So
We can hear it.
oh, you'll be able to hear this. So let me get this on me, and I go. There is a failure at the entering impulse. How did that make you feel?
There was that anticipation factor that Cherie was mentioning, because we're like, okay, and where is it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think about like doing cliff jumping, and like there's like a really big cliff, and you're like, ah, okay, you know, that feeling just before.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, especially when just before you take the jump, you go, did I put my parachute on?
Yep. Yeah, so there does seem to be this anticipation factor and this intention factor that comes with, that is preceding that anticipation. James.
This is good because it sort of cuts me off from getting my own weird little interpretations. So we're talking about, a gentle push and anticipation. You see, previously, I mean, way previously, like I've always sort of had the idea that anything could, perhaps because of the translation into shock, anything could be a shock, including something savage, disruptive, as long as it's novel in some way, as long as it disrupted your world. And I could even expand it to include traumatic stuff, which might then initiate a cycle of healing and growth out of brutal necessity. But the impression I'm getting is it's in the terms of what actually inspires growth around the circle. It's not necessary. It's something subtler, or it's not as wide a definition. Anything that disrupted business as usual, be it pain or pleasure, that's a shock. But that's not what we're saying. You're saying here, is it?
Yeah, and the definition of it is something comes in from the outside to facilitate the process.
Okay.
And this is where a lot of modern pseudo Gurdjieffian people get it all confused, because especially some of the guru type teachers who think, oh, it's my job to apply these shocks to everybody.
Right.
And
Yeah.
a slap upside the head is not a conscious shock in this sense. It's not the impulse. It's not the word that Gurdjieff used. And according to Madame de Hartmann, it's specifically not the word that Gurdjieff used. And she would know.
Yeah, what was, I mean, I can't remember exactly her relationship to the group.
She was one of his closest students.
Mhm.
Her husband was the one who wrote the music.
Yep.
She made Gurdjieff's life work in many, many ways. And along with Madame de Salzmann, if it weren't for them, the teaching might have died out.
Yeah, the
Wait.
unsung hero women behind the scenes that we
Yeah.
don't hear enough about. But I mean, I can speak for myself. I suggested this topic, and Mushtaq and I took the initiative to do it because I feel as though this was revelatory for me personally, in the sense that now I understand a little bit better why we've been talking about there being something needing to enter in from outside, not just in the sense of like, oh, food as an object enters in from outside, or efforting enters in. There's this sense of there being this we're going to use all the same words, this push, yes, that facilitates rather than necessarily startling us to action. And I think there are things that startle us and can inspire us, but we're talking about starting in terms of the Enneagram with that spark of an inspiration and moving from there.
Yeah, what she said.
And I think that that's much more empowering, actually, than the understanding that I had been working with previously. So I really do appreciate that. Hello.
So is the just before, when you reach a point just before an interval, I'm guessing that would be first force. The need for a shock would be second force, and the overcoming into the next note, I guess, would be third force. Is that right?
You mean in the sense of affirming, denying, reconciling?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it could very well be.
Because it's like I'm seeing at it as my understanding of the tree of Mazzucamno, the law of three, was that the middle line is a reconciling line. So to me, if you're going according to the system and trying to play the great music of the cosmos, you're attempting to, I don't know if the word is overcome these shocks or work through these shocks, but to get to a higher resolution, a higher reconciliation, right?
Yeah. And the thing to remember, though, is that at the level of the law of three, and when we're going to go back to music here, you are playing a chord. And you're playing it as one note. If you are in time, which is where the law of six comes in, you are playing the law of three as an arpeggio, starting at a different point for each of the six laws. And it's the only way I know how to describe it is in musical terms, because when I play chords, I hear this. I hear the difference between a chord that is, say, three notes played at once and a chord that is played in an arpeggio. It's exactly the same notes, but they have totally different feels.
So For those who are not familiar with the vocabulary, arpeggio is when you play each of those three notes separately as opposed to at the same time.
Separately and sequentially.
Yes. So that was me doing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you do 1, 3, 5?
1, 3, 5.
There you go. That is an arpeggio of a major chord.
Now I cannot sing all of those notes at the same time, unfortunately.
Yeah, because you ain't one of those Tibetan throat singers. So
No.
dang. And Ian had something to say here while we're blathering on about this.
Yeah, Ian says, I think there is another aspect of this that I've been thinking about, which is that the push needs to be calibrated.
Oh, such a good word. Yes.
To
Keep
come
going.
back to the venerable kitchen example, it needs to be the right quantity and quality of food to match the expected size of the community.
Exactly right. And the expected meal that you're going to make.
This kind of touches on what Chris was saying, where he realized that the amount of input was going to have to be increased to get the result that he was looking for at point 3 and point 4 and all that stuff. Yes, he says with enthusiasm. Yes.
Yeah, so that is a very good and a very important observation, which I'm pretty sure is absolutely correct. Or so correct that we can actually use it, which is sometimes even better.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, how we will have to figure out ways to incorporate this discussion into how we teach the Enneagram going forward. That's my sense of it. I think that's going to be important.
Because this is, for us, this is really honing in on an aspect that we've been sloppy about.
Yeah, and that we've been trying to convey but have struggled to convey. And this has been helpful in retuning that.
Yeah, and that boils down to, and here we go again. We now know the word that Gurdjieff used as opposed to the word that some translator used. And this is an ongoing problem in the pursuit of enlightenment. What a translator said is usually not what the original said. I sat down and learned Koine Greek because I knew that the translators of the King James Bible were lying to me. I didn't know how they were lying to me until I could read it in the original, but then I knew they were lying.
Yep. It takes a lot of patience, but obviously it has been worthwhile to go back to basics, to go back to the foundations. Okay, Halil, yes.
Yeah, just a comment and a question. So the comment is that this kind of proves the whole point of that you can't really get esoteric wisdom from just reading the book. You've got to be part of a school, because the people in the school, particularly the teachers, will be able to point out the ambiguities that are always already in any text, not just the mystical text, but the Bible. A grocery shopping list is subject to ambiguities. And unless you can go back to your mom and ask what you really meant by oranges, right? Did you mean navel oranges or Andalusian or whatever they're called? You know, every text is subject to deep ambiguities, and the more mystical or complex the text, the more it's necessary to have at hand an interpreter to guide you through those ambiguities. So that's the comment. The question is, and in light of that comment, do you guys have any recommendations for exercises or practices we can do to make this more real for us?
We're working on that right now, because this this has opened up a window for us very recently. And so we will have exercises. The first one, though, would be to listen to a major scale being played and stopped at different points and asking yourself, how did that feel? So you sit down in front of a piano, play a major scale, whatever key you like. I like A, but that's me.
I mean, you can even do C.
C
Start,
is
you
good,
know,
yeah.
just classic, straight, middle C. You could probably find somebody playing that for you on YouTube even. And then just
Yeah, the idea though is
take that.
you play a sequence of notes and you stop and you feel, because the secret to the Enneagram, and this is something that I was taught years ago, is that you feel the points in your body. You use your moving center to help you understand where you are in the Enneagrammic cycle.
And
Ian,
I would think a starting place just for now is to, oh, who did we lose?
I'm back.
I think it was Alka, unfortunately.
Oh, bummer.
Say hi to her. But anyway, just to take this fresh understanding that we've all been talking about, and if you are already familiar with the Enneagram and are applying it to your life, take notice of how it feels to think of it more as this impulse, this impelling, as opposed to a shock, and see how that resonates or doesn't for you. But I think that it likely will resonate more deeply than this idea of a shock.
Yeah, it does to me, because the points that we call shock points are actually points where you receive energy to keep on going. Whereas I think of a shock as something that stops you.
Yeah, like, oh, and I mean, I know that I have thought of it that way myself and been confused by that. So
Yeah.
this is just, it makes more cognitive sense this way.
Okay, and we need to get to Ian's question but before that, I want to add one thing to what Khalil was saying, which is
Yes.
the school, it's not just important for school to have a teacher who can help clarify things. It's important that the school have a group of people who can discuss like this and create a higher synergy, because all of us together are going to be able to get more clarity than each one of us alone. Even if it's through a purely dialectical process, we're going to work it out. But I like to think that we've gone beyond the dialectic in this. So as the dervish, was it Boga Eddin who said it? Some heavy duty Sufi dude in meetings with remarkable men said, we consider that the teacher and the student, so-called, create the teaching together.
I'm feeling that tonight for
Yeah,
sure.
this is what we're doing right now. We are creating the teaching together. It's not us front loading you. We're all figuring this crap out.
I love it when that happens.
Yeah. And it's mo better.
It is Mo better. Yay. Thanks, Mushtak. So I will read Ian's
Read
thoughts
Ian's.
now. He has a I do have a couple of other things.
Do them in the order you think best, but
Yeah,
Ian, we will not forget you.
well, no, I think there's just a typo. First of all, in the Enneagram of Digestion, did we ever do that? I don't know if we did.
We've referred to it a couple of times, but we've never done a whole thing on it.
Yeah, I guess that's one of those classic Gurdjieff texts, Enneagrams, so just keep that, bracket that. There are 3 octaves depicted. Oh, this one, yes.
Yeah.
With the air entering to start a 2nd octave and impressions entering at point 6 to start a 3rd octave.
Yeah.
That, to me, gives a different picture of how the quote-unquote shocks work.
Yeah, to me it doesn't. But there are a number of different ways to use an Enneagram. The kitchen represents one very useful, practical way and the beginner's way. What we're talking about here is a much more complex way. And the thing to remember is that, so you eat food, that is your first Enneagram. When you add breath, that starts a second Enneagram, but the food doesn't stop there. The food continues on and digests and is expelled. But the breath is doing something a little bit different. And then when you add the impressions, it's a third octave, but breath still continues. You don't stop breathing when you start taking impressions. So yes, it's a different method of using the Enneagram, which is equally valid, but looks at the different events.
Happening semi-simultaneously.
Yeah, and that's where we get into the spiral Enneagram, where things are either going up or down in a spiral from Enneagram to Enneagram, hopping from shock point to shock point.
So, second one.
Yes.
How does your terminology about the quote impulses, unquote, relate to the forces? Using Gurdjieff's terminology, wholly affirming, denying, and reconciling.
Okay, so wholly affirming, denying, and reconciling are the three notes of a major chord, let's say. In time, in this universe, those notes have to be played sequentially, not simultaneously, because we're going around the line of time on the Enneagram. The line of time is the circle, and we talked about this just a couple of weeks ago.
Linear, sort of.
Yeah, linear time goes around the circle of the Enneagram clockwise. What? Yeah, clockwise. I first learned it counterclockwise, but it was from somebody who was a native Arabic speaker, and so everything is.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So when you get to the first shock, or the first interval, what quality of energy does it need? And it might be wholly affirming energy, it might be wholly denying energy, it might be wholly reconciling energy. It could be any one of the three. And whichever one, let's say there, it needs to be wholly reconciling. Then maybe the second shock, you look at that and you go, oh, that's going to be wholly denying. And that means that the initiating shock would have been wholly affirming. Yeah, I think we have done a video on the 6 laws, or the 6 processes is what we call it. 3 laws and 6 processes.
Did a course on it. We have not done.
No, we've done a video on it as well.
Okay.
I distinctly remember it, even if I hallucinated it.
Okay.
And it will be up in the corner, probably here at the end of the video.
Yeah, so Enneagram of Kitchen and 6 laws.
Yeah.
Or 6 processes. Whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
Okay, haven't seen that one yet. Yeah, you'll have to check it out, Ian.
And we did do a whole course on it. 10-week course. That was fun.
It was fun.
We may have to do it again sometime.
I think we should do it again sometime relatively soon. All right. Anything else that we need to add?
Chris has a question.
Chris asks, maybe better for after the recording so it doesn't go too long. You should just spit it out, Chris, because someone else might benefit from it too.
Yeah, and if people have very, very short attention spans, this is not the place for them anyway.
Nice. So I've been working with the Enneagram of the moon, and with the new moon being the reconciling, and then the affirming waxing moon, denying waning moon,
Okay.
and like the full moon being that point between the 4 and the 5 where there's a phase transition.
Hmm.
And so then you have the temporal, like there's normal time that goes by. So it's usually like somewhere around roughly 9 days or so that it would be around the active shock time. And what I've found, like time and time again, is that for me, I've experienced it as like shocking in a way. So like one time, right around that time, there was a rattlesnake in my grandfather's house when I was there. And then like another time, like there was a tenant who had like some weird thing happen at the house. And then another time, it was like another tenant having some other weird thing. It was just interesting how it was like, and even like a theme of like guests that I didn't invite are showing up, like something from the outside coming in a way. But it was having like a kind of disruptive quality to it. So
Interesting.
just yeah, and I wonder if part of it is because when I'm working with something like the moon, it's not a process that I'm initiating, it's like a process that I'm like a part of,
Yeah,
versus like me
an
selling my
ongoing
house or something.
process without a particular start or end.
I would use every new moon as like
Yeah, but
the
that's
point
you
nine.
deciding that that's
Yeah.
a start or an end.
Yeah.
That's not what the moon has decided.
I don't I think this might be a longer conversation.
It could be, but this is brilliant, and I am hoping that you will write something up on this at the very least, and at the very most, I think that we should get on this thing, you and me and Noor, and do a talk about it. Let us question you, ask you, teach
Nice.
us.
If you don't
Nice. That sounds
mind,
fun.
that would be
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely game. Yeah, it's been very helpful. And when I haven't done it after having done it for a little over, I think, almost 2 years, I'm really glad when I do it.
Okay. So we'll
Yeah.
take note.
I would totally get you we will do a special video and get you to teach it to us, then we'll steal it all. File out the
Deal.
serious claim
Deal.
that we learned it from Atlanteans.
Trademark it while you're at it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Ian
thank
says
you. It sounds fun.
interesting. A whole different perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we have something to look forward to, and we've covered a lot of cool things this evening, and shown that we are all in the process of learning and expanding uh our insights into something that has been kicking around for a while, the Enneagram and all of the context around that, but there are always ways to expand on what we know and to uncover things that we thought we knew but actually did not. So
Yeah. And we have again done a demonstration on what a school is like. And when I say school, that's with a capital S. And people don't understand this. I mean, I get comments every month from really nice, really well-meaning people who say to me, if you just scripted this more, it would be better. You would get more people who would subscribe, and it would be more polished, and the information would be there. And we can't, because we make this teaching together every week. This is the school. You guys are the students. We pretend that we're the teachers, and we create the teaching together in the moment. So it would be different if we scripted something out and we're all polished and everything. I can do that. I used to edit movies for a living at one point in my life. Not like, big movies, but little movies. But I know how to do it. I can make something that looks polished. Maybe I will. People will hate it.
Yep. Yeah, as Ian says, yes, I thought about that, about more polish during some of the first of your videos that I watched. I've changed my perspective since. Well, thank you, Ian. Yeah, I mean, we get it. There are moments where, like, you know, we go through our own content and we're like, ah, just get to the point already. But
Yeah, and there are
this is
places
the
where,
nature of the thing.
yeah,
Love
there are
it or
places where
leave it.
you and I pause and go, But this is the reality of life. Sometimes you have to stop and think.
Yep. Suck it up. Don't care.
No,
If you want
the people
polish, frankly, you're gonna have to pay for it because that's where the paid stuff is gonna come in.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. And as the, you know, the teacher, that is what I say.
Yeah,
So,
but I want to really emphasize the fact that everybody who has given me these kind of comments has been really nice and really kind and meant really well by it. There was no vindictive stuff like, oh, we hate you because you so
yeah,
and on and stuff. It's like,
that is true, and I'm glad to hear that. I mean, we appreciate the encouragement.
yeah. And maybe one of these days we'll do a polished video. It could be done. It'll
Maybe.
be all AI animation.
You'll love it.
Yeah.
All right, let's
We're already on Brady Bunch mode.
excellent. Okay. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us. Some of you have been here twice today, which is pretty damn exciting as always. Thank you so much for participating in this conversation because, I mean, really, it was important for this to be a conversation. All right, so we can wave to each other, wave to everybody watching on
Bye.
YouTube.
And we will see you
Next week.
next time.
Yeah.